Will do. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for the May 18th, 2021 Monte Sereno City Council meeting. Before this meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist council members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Council members, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the City Council regular meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a council member speaking. Please use raise hand to be recognized by the mayor and enabled to speak to the council. To comment under oral communication or any agenda item, you're allowed 3 minutes to speak per agenda item. Emails limited to 350 words can also be submitted to the city clerk and it will be read into the record. This word limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute time allowance. Only attendees using Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and cannot provide feedback or public comment. Lastly, because we are all not in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call.
Thank you. I hereby call the City Council meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council for Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lawler,
Present.
Councilmember Makachek,
Present.
Councilmember Turner,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Present.
Thank you. And Mayor Luthold.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Radcliffe or Mr. Leonardis, any changes to the orders of the day?
I don't have any changes.
Hearing none. We have no presentations this evening, so let's go ahead and move to oral communications. Oral communications is the time for members of the public to speak to the council about issues which are not on today's agenda. If you want to speak on something that's on the agenda, we will call on people when the time comes. If there's any members of the public wishing to speak on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand and we will recognize you. Yes, we have Ginger McDonald with a hand up. And Ms. Radcliffe, if you will recognize Ms. McDonald when you get a chance.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. I was unfortunately did not receive the application for a grant for the Doug McNeil Fund. And if you wish to wait for me to speak when you address the grants at that time, that'll be fine. But I just wanted to make sure that I am in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. We did see that you had sent in some late communication this evening. That has been circulated to the council members. And so when we come to that section, we'll give you another opportunity to raise your hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else, members of the public wishing to speak on anything not on the agenda? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move next to written communications. Ms. Radcliffe, did we receive any written communications that have not made it into the agenda packet?
No, we have not.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, we have not received anything from what I sent earlier today.
Okay, and we did receive an update late this evening or early this evening. Did those make it to the agenda packet, particularly the Doug McNeil information and the other information that you sent us?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving next to the consent calendar. I will go ahead and we will treat the consent calendar as a single item unless there are members of the public or any council member wishing to pull an item. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you in a moment. Let me turn first to council members though. Does anyone on the council wish to pull any of the items on the consent calendar for detailed discussion or have any short questions of staff? Seeing none and seeing no hands raised, I will go ahead and formally open public comment on the consent calendar. If we have any members of the public wishing to speak now, this will be your chance to raise your hand on the 3 matters on the consent calendar. Please go ahead and do so if that's what you wish to speak on. Seeing none, we will close public comment and we will now move back to council. Any further questions or issues you wish to raise with staff, or do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Mr. Mekachek has a hand up. Were you in there, or did you have a question? No questions.
All
Okay.
good.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Elahi with a second by Councilmember Lawler. Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Yes.
Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
A motion passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. We have no scheduled unfinished business. Turning now to new business. Item number 1 of new business is to consider and approve the Youth Commission's selection of a winner of the Monte Sereno Social Justice Award. Do we have a staff report on that issue?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a brief introduction of the item. So I believe it was last year about this time, there was some social unrest and some councils were adopting resolutions and things to recognize this. And our council met and discussed this last May and decided that it would be a good idea to have an ongoing message to raise awareness about social justice issues. And the Youth Commission picked up the idea, was tasked with the idea of coming up with this Social Justice Award, which brings an ongoing awareness on an annual basis by recognizing one outstanding student and what the work that they've done towards improving social justice issues in their community. And it was open to any high school that a Monte Sereno resident could possibly attend, such as Westmont or Bellarmine or Los Gatos High School or Saratoga High School, et cetera, et cetera. And the Youth Commission worked very well with us this year. They put a lot of effort into it. And we did kind of get the announcement out a little later than we anticipated, but it was actually very well received by the community. And we got some excellent submissions, and the Youth Commission chose 2 co-winners this year. And I believe we have some of them here this evening to speak about essentially their essays that they submitted and what social justice means to them. And we look forward to, should council move forward with accepting this, every year we'll continue this project, and we will do a press announcement probably sometime in February or March. The Youth Commission will decide on the winner at their last May meeting, and the award will be issued by council at our last May meeting. And then we'll make a press release for the winner, and we will also notify the school, and hopefully they will be recognized at their probably their graduation ceremony or the ceremony when they issue all the scholarships at the end of the year. They have a special ceremony for that sometimes. So it has been a wonderful experience from my point of view, and Councilmember Lawler also attended all the meetings. And we look very forward to this hearing this evening and council's discussion on it. That concludes my comments. Oh, and the money is in the budget from the Youth Commission. I think we have $2,500 in the budget. So the awards are $1,000 each. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. It's my intention to go ahead and see if council have questions on this. Formally open public comment, close public comment, then we'll come back to some council discussion. And then assuming that council has approved and gone forward with this recommendation to us, then at that point, I would like to certainly give the opportunity for the winners to speak if they wish to. So that'll be the time when we come back and have them talk to us a little bit, unless council wants to hear from them before we vote. So turning first actually to Ms. Lawler, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we open public comment in the nature of talking about the staff report?
Well, sure. Mr. Leonardis covered the nexus of the award. As you remember, we decided to do something that would be more meaningful in the long term, and the Youth Commission picked it up and ran with it, and they worked hard and they deliberated over these fantastic applicants. It was not an easy decision, but they did a great job. And what's special about this in particular is that this is long lasting, and they really have made a mark on Monte Sereno. So very proud of them.
Great, thank you. Any other council member questions on the staff report before we open public comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and open this for public comment. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this matter before it comes back to council for discussion and vote, please raise your hand. We will give you the opportunity to be heard. Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring this back for council discussion and a vote. Do we have any council members wishing to weigh in at the discussion time here? So please raise your hand. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was really good to read the essays and not just read it, but to see what the individuals have been doing. I mean, that was it's outstanding. I mean, Alexa and Tatum both contributed to society, contributed to what's going on, and I think we are living in a generation where the youth, the kids that are coming up, they're very smart, very intelligent, and very focused. So this is good to see that, and I hope we can make this a permanent thing. So I would like to congratulate the people who were nominated. They deserve it very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members wishing to speak on this? Yes, Ms. Lawler.
I just want to say congratulations to the winners. And yes, this is supposed to be a long-term, yearly, annual award.
Great. Anyone else?
Yes, I would like to echo Mayor Pro Tem's Lahi's comments and Councilmember Lawler's. I was very impressed, and I think it's great having following the recommendation of the Youth Commission.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Turner, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just would like to congratulate all of the Youth Commission for their hard work this year. What I'd like to do and suggest this to our city managers to see if we can post the pictures of the winners at City Hall for the year.
Great, thank you. Excellent idea. If we can post their pictures at City Hall and online, and also perhaps links to their submissions. So do we have a motion to approve the Youth Commission's selection of the winners this year?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lawler with a second by Councilmember Mekachek. Councilmember Turner?
Yeah.
Councilmember Lawler?
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi?
Aye.
Mayor Luthold?
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
All right, at this time, I would like to invite, if they wish to speak, our winners. That was Tatum and Alexa, Tatum Thomas and Alexa Kapoor. Tatum, do you wish to speak? If so, if you can raise your hand and we will recognize you.
Hi, my name is Tatum. If you don't know me, I'm a junior at Los Gatos High School, and I am just beyond honored to be recognized for this award. I think in the past year, as a community, we've been through a lot, and getting to work with Good Samaritan Hospital and a couple other huge people in our community working for healthcare change has been awesome. And this money from the award is going to go to Good Samaritan Hospital in our local community. So it's really going to have an impact right here at home and going towards some really fantastic programs they're doing.
Great. Thank you so much and congratulations. I believe that we do not have Alexa Kapoor here to speak, but if you are and have sneaked in under someone else's name, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. If not, we will go ahead and move on. So again, congratulations again, and what a wonderful thing that was done. I want to again add my kudos to especially Ms. Lawler, who I think helped spearhead this idea initially to make this something far more than just let's give some money to some national organization. This is great. So thank you so much. Turning next to item 2 on new business, this is to consider and approve the Youth Commission selection of the Name the Quail contest and adopt a resolution officially naming Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, as the Monte Sereno Quail. Do we have either a staff report, or is this something Ms. Lawler is going to talk about?
Well, thank you, Mayor. Again, for the Youth Commission, they did a wonderful job working on this project as well. We just celebrated the birthday of Monte Sereno. We didn't really celebrate, but it would have been celebrated on May 14th, last Friday, as our 64th year. And of course, the California quail has been the omnipresent symbol of the city of Monte Sereno ever since the beginning. And the quail at one point in time was referred to as Monte, M-O-N-T-E, in some city newsletters, but it was never officially adopted by name in resolution. So we tasked the Youth Commission with coming up with the idea of a contest to name that quail officially. And we wanted to see what the community would bring forward. And there was just a number of creative names. They were all great names. There were several variations of the spelling of Monty as well. But in the end, the Youth Commission decided to name the quail, or the recommendation they chose was M-O-N-T-Y as opposed to M-O-N-T-E. And I guess it is representative of what the initial request was, more of a pet name, more of a gender neutral name, those type of things. But in the end, it was a very fun experience. The community got out and was very engaged. And I think the recommendation they brought forward is very fitting for the community. So another fun and rewarding experience for the Youth Commission this year. That concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions or further staff report level comments? Seeing none, let me open the public comment. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we will recognize you. Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring this back to council for discussion. Any council members wishing to speak on this issue? Yes, Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say what a great job the Youth Commission has done engaging the community. There were many name submissions for this, so it was really fun, I think, for the entire community and our kids to be involved. And Monty was the resounding winner, so it was really fun. So good job, Youth Commission.
Great, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, I will join in. I think this was a good example of coming up with something that's important to Monte Sereno. I mean, it kind of symbolizes what we are. And I also learned a lot. I mean, especially from Ms. Carolyn Grace. She gave us a whole description on why that name is important and why this is a male quail rather than a female quail. Because she explains the male has a black face, sharply outlined in white, a rich brown crown, and a forward-facing crest, while the female has a brownish-gray head, a smaller crest, and lacks strong head markings. The California quail is one of many bird species in which males are more colorful and conspicuous than females. So we've named her, and we also now understand, or named him, and we also now understand a little bit about quails. So thank you for submitting the applications, and I think that was a good event, I guess. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Mekachek.
I'd just like to thank the Youth Commission for doing this, and then also make the comment that I try to ride several days a week around El Sereno through the open space. And every time I see a quail, it just makes me smile. So I think it was really great to see the Youth Commission do this year, and I like the name that they selected.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I just wanted to see if City Manager Leonardis could get the quail on the Wimberley Walkway so that we're complete. So if you could ask Mayor Lucas to create a quail and exhibit it on the Wimberley Walkway, I sure would appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Turner. Mr. Lucas did actually do a recreation of our city seal made out of organic materials on the walkway. So he actually did create the quail and post it in what he calls the gallery over there on the fence. So a very clever rendition made of all natural materials made by Mr. Lucas himself. And we also have a sign at the bottom with our symbol on it as well.
We should take a picture of that and put it at City Hall as well.
Yeah, if you can put a name tag on it now that we have a name, that might be useful.
That would be cute.
So sounds good. Councilmember Lawler.
And I might add that perhaps Monty will make an appearance at the city picnic this fall.
Yeah.
Our city manager is used to wearing a bunny suit, I think. So
see if we can get Monty in a quail suit. Huh?
There you go.
That sounds good. Yeah, I wanted to recognize some of the wonderful names in case people, I know the council has read through, but if, and we don't have a lot of public here today, but if members of the public are listening to this later, it's certainly worth looking at the names that were submitted. Some of my favorites, Serrano de Bergerac was pretty creative. Feather struck me as interesting, and I liked the suggestion of Steinbeck as well. As kind of in our community. So that was great. Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Is that Councilmember Mekachek with the motion?
I think it was Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, thank you. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Elahi and second by Councilmember Lawler. Councilmember Turner?
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi?
Yes.
And Mayor Lethal.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
All right. Moving to item number 3, this is to consider and appoint members of the 2021 to 2022 Monte Sereno Youth Commission. Do we have a staff report?
Hi, Mayor Michelle here, City Clerk. I can start off with this item. The Youth Commission Ordinance calls for appointment of youth commissioners annually and allows up to 15 youth commissioners to be members. Each member of the City Council can appoint 1 member, and the remaining 10 appointments are at-large appointments. This year, the city received 5 applications from Monte Sereno Youth. 4 of the 5 applicants are current Youth Commission members. We have the capacity to appoint 10 more applicants if the City Council wishes to extend the deadline due to COVID. And the appointed applicants will be required to fill out and sign the Monte Sereno Youth volunteer waiver and release liability form. I'm open to any questions that the council may have.
Council, any questions? Seeing none.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I guess COVID probably prevented mass mailing or proper advertising. I know in the past also we haven't had a full applicant submittal with the deadline. Then we've extended it, and then more people have applied. So it sounds like there's more advertising or information that needs to go out on this also.
Yes, we have advertised the recruitment on our social media platforms, on our website. We've asked the youth commissioners to advertise on their social media platforms as well as their schools. We can continue the recruitment, the advertisement if the council wishes to extend the deadline to accept more applications.
Thank you.
Great. And Councilmember Mekachek, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes, I do. So we've got 5 applicants for 15 spots. I think that if we're having a discussion, it would be good to appoint these 5 and then extend the application period. I know that we're going to be opening up in the middle of June across the state, and I think it'll get a lot more people engaged. I believe that this has obviously been a difficult year, and I think the Youth Commission is something that is much better if it's an in-person thing. So I would be in favor of extending the application period, but having these people, these applicants, at least start the ball rolling. So those are kind of my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Let me actually, since we're getting into the discussion of those details, let me go ahead and formally open public comment on this. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this issue regarding appointment of youth commissioners, please raise your hand and we will recognize you at this time. Seeing none, we will close public comment and return this back to council for further discussion and action. Any other council members wishing to weigh in? Yes, Councilmember Lawler.
Yes, thank you. So what we found this year, last year, because of COVID, we did extend the deadline because we were having real difficulty getting applications. This year, we had 15 youth commissioners, which means we need a quorum of 8. And that's been very hard to accomplish this year. The kids are at a very busy time in high school, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. With COVID and homeschooling, I think it was, or Zoom schooling, I think it was quite difficult. So it was challenging getting a quorum. So that said, I wouldn't be averse to appointing 5 and trying with a youth commission of 5. We will only need a quorum of 3, and we might be able to have more success that way. However, I like Councilmember Mekachek's idea in going ahead and appointing those 5. We could always then extend it and see if there are any more that are interested and we can add them. That's my comment.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Turner, did you have your hand up or did you just not take it down from last time?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to also add, I think we should also ask the people, especially who are submitting grants to us, to advertise this. For example, KCAT and Rotary and Kiwanis Club. They should also, advertise it in their material, send it out to their members to let them know that there's opening for youth commissioners in Monte Sereno. And I agree. I think we should appoint the ones that have applied in time, and then extend the deadline out to see if we can get additional members, because the youth commissioner has performed admirably with this last period, as you can tell, and I think a few more would certainly, hopefully, provide more support to each other and give us better results. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? All right. Yes, Councilmember Lawler.
I just had an idea that in the future, if say next year we still have the same problem recruiting more than 5, perhaps we should suggest changing the number of appointed to 10, given that the teenage population does vacillate, it vacillates over time. So sometimes there's more teenagers in our population and sometimes there's less. So maybe that's a more reasonable number to ask for.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I recall that it wasn't too long ago that we were extending the number because we had a lot of great applicants, and this is really something to get people involved in city government, to help them with activities. And so it's really, and then really the involvement in the city and the energy that the Youth Commission brings to the city is great. So it is a kind of a dynamic thing. I'm in agreement that we should certainly recognize the timely applications of the 5 and appoint them now, perhaps extend this for a reasonable period of time to see if there are other applications. But it sounds like it's not necessarily crying out to fill a full 15 persons, but if there are more people who are interested and just didn't get to it, didn't realize there were openings and that this is something that they might be interested in, a little more advertising might work. So I would suggest if an amendment to adopt this resolution, appointing the 5 and extending the time period for say 2 months worth of meetings, if staff thinks that's appropriate, if the Youth Commission liaison, Ms. Lawler, thinks a shorter period of time is appropriate, I'm open to that as well. Ms. Lawler, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think, I think, Mr. Leonardis, what did we do last year? We extended it an additional month. Do you recall?
Thank you, Councilmember Lawler, for your question. So I was just looking at the calendar. So we have 2 meetings in June based on the motion the mayor made. We can, of course, have June 1st, June 15th, and then we would, of course, have August 3rd and August 17th. So we could extend the deadline to, I think we should probably have it maybe by August 11th, so we can include it in the staff report for the meeting on August 17th, something like that. And that would get us essentially the 2 months worth of meetings, but it would actually be almost 3 months because of the, where we have a recess in July. But I think that would give us plenty of opportunity to recruit and get the message out there, get the word out there.
And Mr. Leonardis, there. I'm sorry,
there with recruiting.
Right. And when is the Youth Commission's first meeting is September or August? September.
It would be September 14th would be the first
Right.
meeting of
Okay.
the 21-22 year.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Radcliffe.
So Ms. Lawler, what's your thinking on that? Should we go out to the first meeting in August as the deadline?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think right now kids are busy and they're going to be on summer vacation, and that gives them plenty of time for us to accumulate more youth commissioners. I think that's fine. It gives them plenty of time.
Great. Okay, so the request that I've made is to amend to take this out to the beginning of August for the deadline for additional applications, and to bring it back at the first meeting in August for council member consideration.
Yeah, excuse me, I just had a question as to when is our annual picnic? Because I know the Youth Commission has a stall and do also participate in it. Is there a schedule for that yet, or?
I think we are looking at potentially mid to late August for that.
Yeah, so it'd be good to have the Youth Commission in place if possible, at least a couple of weeks before that, so they could participate in it.
So I think that brings us to the having them the deadline before that meeting, and then have us bring in for consideration. So I guess we should probably have the deadline a week before. That way the list of names and applications can get on the agenda for the first week in August.
Okay, so I can put the deadline for applications as July 28th to be considered by the council at its August 3rd meeting.
Perfect. That's my motion. Thanks for your help, everyone. Do we have a second on the amendment?
Motion.
So first it's well, I guess we can do this all at once. So it is to amend the deadlines as indicated to July 28th with consideration of additional members at the first meeting in August, and to go ahead at this time and appoint the 5 applicants. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mayor Newbold with the second by Councilmember Makachek. Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Makachek,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Palahi,
Yes.
and Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you much. Okay, moving to item number 4. This is consideration of the community CBO grants evaluation and discussion and potential acceptance. Do we have a staff
I
report?
think there's a hand raised.
Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, you still have a hand up. Did you have further comment? And you're muted at the same time. You're still muted. All right, no hands up and nothing to say. Thank you, Councilmember Makachek.
Mayor Luthold, take a look at the attendees.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we did have a hand up. Okay, thank you. We've got Kate Makachek with a hand up. Let's, if this is on the, is this related to the Youth Commission? If so, let's go ahead and get you recognized and have you talk to us.
Yeah, this is related to the Youth Commission. I would just like to say that my time on the Youth Commission has been extremely amazing and how I've been able to benefit the community, and all the stuff we've done with hygiene drives, with the Monte Sereno Social Justice Scholarship Award. I found it very meaningful and appreciative that I've had the opportunity to be a part of the Youth Commission. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a part of it. Okay, no other hands up. Thank you everyone for pointing that out. Let's now move to item number 4. This is consideration and discussion regarding the community grants. Do we have a staff report on the community grants issue?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Last year in 2020, Council adopted a new community grants policy, and we created an online application available through our website. And this year we made our announcements via press release next door and e-blast, etc., about the period for community grants being starting on March 3rd and running through the deadline of May 5th. So we could bring it to you this evening. We received requests for 7 community grants, and then we received in our initial staff report, and then we received a late request this afternoon. And the amount of the grants requested exceeds the amount that we have in our policy and our budget, which we had $20,000 set aside, which last year was enough because we awarded $17,000 in grants. However, this year, the requests are exceeding that amount of $20,000. The grants, the criteria for the grants is that it should be a 501c3 corporation, and it should have a nexus to the community. In other words, Monte Sereno residents should benefit by the organizations that the grant requests are being made from. And I am open or available for questions beyond what I just mentioned and what is in the staff report. But again, the idea of picking the fixed amount of the $20,000 was to have a number every year that we can budget for, a fixed number, and have a formal process of 2 months and have it be an organized process with the nexus and those types of things. And it worked out very well. It served us very well last year, and I think it will serve us well this year. Oh, one more aside. Last year, because of COVID-19, we did award 2 special grants to West Valley Community Services for housing relief because of the pandemic. So in addition to the $17,000 that we gave out of the $20,000 originally allocated, we did set aside an additional $5,000 and another $5,000. And also there was $5,000 awarded as a special grant for the DART trailer, the disaster aid response team on behalf of the police department. So in effect, last year, we did give $32,000 in grants 3 of them being special grants after the community grants process was formally done last May. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions of staff at this time before we go to public comment? Is your hand up, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi?
Yeah, thank you for the report. And all these organizations are doing really great work. If you can help me with some of the nexus, the support teacher housing, are they supporting any housing for the Dave School teachers that we have? Or is that mostly for, I know they're based in Santa Cruz. Do you know any more specific details on who they're providing housing for? I mean, the only school we have is the Dave School.
Thank you.
I guess Los Gatos and Saratoga might be good, but just curious about that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi. So the Support Teacher Housing Organization is building housing units in Los Gatos for teachers in the Los Gatos, Monte Sereno community. And I believe the individual who runs that organization's family lives in Monte Sereno. So they do have a connection here, but there is a project over on Ditto's Lane in Los Gatos where there will be 4 units of teacher housing. It's actually a new concept. It's a concept that is very rare, where they have affordable housing just for teachers or school administrators. But it's a very, how can I say it? A very needed offering for the individuals who are teachers, because a lot of times there has been teachers in the Los Gatos School District, Los Gatos Union School District, Los Gatos Union Saratoga High School District. On occasion, they had to move out of the area because they could not afford the housing. So that's where we lost some very good teachers, and that's where the idea had originated about 5 years ago. I think it's been in the works. So I hope that answers your question. So to answer your question, I think Dave's Avenue teachers will be eligible to apply for the affordable units.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Lawler.
Yes, thank you. So when I went onto their website, there's not a whole lot of information. They actually don't mention the housing they're building in Los Gatos. So thank you for filling us in on that. Apparently it's a pilot program. And they also say on their website that this not only is for teachers, but it also includes social workers, caregivers, nursing assistants, and police dispatchers. Is that true?
So thank you for the question. I was under the impression that it was for school administrators. So for instance, if somebody were a vice principal and or somebody was on the facilities or some other role in the school district, they would be eligible. I was not aware of first responders or any others that would be, because the title of the project is Support Teacher Housing.
Right, that's why I was asking. It may be a little misleading, although I absolutely support affordable housing for teachers. That's a great thing. I'm just a little bit concerned about whether or not they're actually telling us what they're doing.
All right, thank you. Other questions before we open to public comment? And then we will come back to council discussion and consideration of budgets and the specific applications. Let's go ahead and open this to public comment at this time. I know Ms. McDonald wanted to address us. Anyone else, please raise your hand and get in line to address the council. And Ms. McDonald, if you'll raise your hand again, now's the time. All right, we've actually got Burton Craig with his hand up first. So let's go ahead and recognize Burton Craig. Mr. Craig, go ahead.
Okay, I just saw the little button that popped up and said unmute. So thank you very much for giving me a chance to present KCAT's grant request tonight. Melissa is traveling. Her daughter is graduating from college, so she has asked me to sit in. And we're very excited with the programs that are going on at KCAT this year. We've been working very hard throughout COVID to bring in a new facet of KCAT. So along with our TV station, we're now opening up a streaming section. So you're going to be able to stream KCAT live, which especially in Monte Sereno will be very helpful, as a number of our residents do not actually have access to Comcast cable services. So they'll now be able to stream KCAT content over their phones, through a web browser, or through their Apple TV or Roku device. But we're really excited, and the main purpose of our grant this year is to bring a radio station to our community. And we are starting off with an internet radio station. It will be called KCAT Radio, and we are offering the community the opportunity to create programs. So they can create their own music show, they can create a storytelling. We've had residents be from Los Gatos and Monte Sereno already submitting ideas for shows. We have a few very exciting shows. One of them is a wine show where a resident goes off to the different wineries or the different restaurants in our area and talks with the folks about pairing wines and foods, and how you try to taste wine and how you pair it with foods, and just some really interesting things about wine that I never knew about. In fact, we just concluded the first season, and we're really looking forward to bringing that out. We're shooting for a June timeframe. So we've got the studio built, we've got the equipment in, we've done our first few casts, and this money would really help get us over the top, as we still have a little bit more equipment to purchase. And for the first year, we're not going to be asking people to bring a sponsor along with their show, because we do have to pay the technical support staff to actually come in and produce the shows. We don't have 100% volunteer participation yet. So thank you very much for taking a look at our grant. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them for you.
Great, thank you very much. When we come to council discussion, we may call you back up if there are specific questions, so please stick around.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. McDonald, I didn't see a hand up. I think you have to raise your hand if you wish to be recognized at this time. Not seeing you raising your hand. I think, as you mentioned, you are here representing the Doug McNeil request, which was submitted, and we have received that. And council will be able to talk about the request this evening and make a decision about what council wishes to do. So seeing no other hands, I will close public comment at this time and bring this back to council for discussion. Council members, anybody wanting to speak up about either questions, comments, some of your favorite things, how you want to approach this? I see Mayor Pro Tem Elahi got his hand up first.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we received a lot of requests, and I guess there's two things to consider. Either we increase our budget or look at and prioritize them based on their connections to Monte Sereno. Obviously, KCAT has a very close connection to Monte Sereno, and they're providing information and news to everybody else. So I'm trying to prioritize in my mind as to how we'd approach these. And then Doug McNeil is a Monte Sereno resident, and he's done a lot for the community and continues to do a lot. And basically, the entire Rotary Foundation has gotten behind him and are sponsoring him and supporting him. So he just deserves the support. So I would. And then the West Valley Community Services is a local one. We have given them twice, but that would be in the priority list. The teachers housing thing, I think it's a kind of a pilot program. I would probably need a little bit more to see if they're actually providing services that would help this particular area and how far it's going to go, because it's more of a startup phase, it appears to be. And hopefully they will continue, and we'll be able to, they could submit their request even later on during the year if they can answer this question. And it would be good if they can get some of the Dave school teacher or somebody local behind them with the organization itself. So my thought would be grant of request by for Doug McNeil's support and for KCAT, that's about 10,000. Deny the one for the teacher housing, and then the rest of the group, whatever is left from our 20,000 fund, prorated amongst them. That would be my thought.
Thank you. And actually, I had a question of our city attorney regarding the Doug McNeil request. Obviously, he's a very important member of our community, and we saw the request, the reasoning that the Rotary Club has put this together into a nonprofit and being supportive. I guess my concern and question for the city attorney is even characterized as the nonprofit that it is support for an individual community member or the family with medical bills here, something that is something that we can consider using city funds for or not?
Yeah, that is, I think, an important question, and there is a constitutional prohibition on the gift of public funds. Generally, any public funds have to be used for a public purpose and not for private benefit. And so given that the purpose of this particular nonprofit is to benefit one specific individual, that is concerning. I will say that due to the fact that this application came in so late, I have not had a lot of time to look into that issue further. So I can't at this point recommend that the council proceed with award of that particular grant without having looked into that issue, fully.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that was certainly a concern I saw initially. At the same time, this is something that I certainly am also interested in supporting, not necessarily as a city, but at an individual level. And then if we can look for opportunities, if it's appropriate and allowable for us to help promote this charity on the city website or through city media, that's another question that we can come back and talk about, whether it's appropriate for us to do that. So my thinking was, despite wanting to be supportive with that concern and with the late submission, I think that is a pass for me on that one. I'll come back to some of my other thoughts in a moment here, but I wanted to get that one out there so that we had some input first. So Ms. Lawler, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I completely agree with you. And actually with Mayor Pro Tem Elahi on certain things. I think I agree. I was very concerned about the request for the Doug McNeil Fund. My only suggestion would be, would we be able to gift to direct funds to the Rotary unrestricted? And then they use them how they wish. However, that still might get us in trouble. So I agree. I think that, Los Gatos Music, we've consistently given $5,000 a year. KCAT, we've consistently given $5,000 a year. The Kiwanis, we gave $1,500 last year. I would say between the Kiwanis, the art docents, and the veterans, we split that $1,500 apiece. And West Valley Services have been fantastic. So I would keep those at $5K. So we're looking at $20,000 right there, I believe. Is that right? Does that sound about right?
Let's run down your list here if we've got it. So you had $5K for KCAT,
Yep.
5 for Los Gatos Music and Arts.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make notes as I go along. And then you had veterans and art
Kiwanis
and
the art docents. Mm-hmm.
At $1,500 each.
Yes.
That would be $4,500 there, but close to the 5. And then,
right.
And then you had 5 to West Valley.
Yes. And that should get us to 20.
Okay. All right. Any further comments you wanted to make, Ms. Haller, before we move to Mr. Mekachuk?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Mekachuk.
I appreciate the concern regarding giving money to the Rotary. The one thing that I think you need to consider is they are a 501c3, and I think a 501c3 quote shelters us or you just can't set up yourself to be a 501c3. So I think we're okay with that. Perhaps we should consider waiting to get a more definitive answer before we go final on this. But I do like the allocation that Councilmember Lawler presented.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I'm going to just make a general statement. As long as we do not go over our 20,000 budget here, I am not particular as to how much each company or each patron will actually get. I do also want to make sure that they are 501(c)(3) companies.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so when I came to this, one of my first thoughts was channeling Councilmember Turner's thinking before as our fiscal hawk to not let this get carried away. And so I had set for myself similarly to really look at capping this at 20,000 and not allowing the creep in here unless it was justified by our own receipts and budget, which is something that we can look at in the budgeting process. But where we stand today, doesn't seem to me to be any reason to expand beyond the traditional 20,000 that we've expanded this to in recent years. Looking, I'm also pretty much in line with Councilmember Lawler's suggestions. I think KCAT is a wonderful organization and brings us far more than the $5,000 that we take to them. Los Gatos Music and Arts. I guess the question I have about Los Gatos Music and Arts is, are they coming back? Are they going to have a full schedule this year? Apparently they are making this application to us. So I'm assuming that's a yes. If Mr. Leonardis has information about that, maybe that would be helpful to us.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to your question, they are not planning on having the live concerts this year. There will be no music in the park. There will be no Jazz in the Plaza live concerts. Last year, they adopted a concert forum online where they called it Jazz Off the Plaza. So the organization does continue year long. They still have administrative costs and operational costs. However, unfortunately, because we're actually getting some good news tomorrow from the county on our health order, but that news was not delivered timely enough, early enough in the season where they could schedule the concerts and have them be outdoors. So I would imagine they will either do an online format or maybe they can schedule something special later in the year. But to my knowledge, they don't plan on having any live concerts as we used to know them back in 2019, this year. The allocation that Councilmember Lawler mentioned leaves us with an additional $500. My recommendation would be to choose one of the three organizations should council decide between the veterans, the Kiwanis, or the art docents to add $500 to one of those three organizations. And then there was comments about Mr. McNeil from the city attorney, Mr. Rudin. And I would think if we can get some information and come back at a future time, if the council were able to do a special grant, that might be something to consider later on this year. If council decided they wanted to put that on the agenda, we can explore it then.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I guess now that my question has been addressed a little bit, I almost pose that same question again, which is, do we want to go with our full traditional grant given I understand overhead continues, and yet at the same time, the nexus of service is very different, and they're not paying for necessarily the housing for the visiting artists and all of the equipment and things, cleanup, security that's being provided for. As much as I love the programs they bring us, when they're bringing them to us in an online format, I think we might want to consider spreading that money around potentially differently. I know The veterans is an opportunity where we can help fund that, I think, but they're going to be coming back and helping us with the community center and what we do for the Veterans Project there. They'll probably be bringing more back into Monte Sereno than we're passing to them here. So I would consider potentially, if other council is in agreement with this thought, maybe taking some of the grant money down, perhaps to 3,000 on music, and bringing it up, applying that money and maybe the extra 500 over to at least the veterans on that. That's one of my thoughts. Others?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great idea. That works.
Actually, Ginger McDonald has her hands up. Maybe if you allow her to speak for a minute, she might be able to address the remaining issue. Maybe you can take care of that too.
Thank you for pointing that out. So let's go ahead and reopen public comment for a moment so we can recognize Ms. McDonald.
Thank you so much. I apologize for leaving you, but my screen went blank. I could see and hear you, but I could not access and certainly not the hand up. Clarification to the questions raised both by the attorney and other members of the council. The Los Gatos Morning Rotary Charitable Foundation is a 501c3. We had organized lighting for literacy some years ago, and that also was under the 501c3. The Doug McNeil Fund is under the 501c3 as a nonprofit, and it is of course tax deductible to individuals, corporations, etc. And we set it up for that because we were having several individuals wanting to make a donation. We do have a fund account, and I guess there's a fee attached with that fund account, GoFundMe account, and some people voiced concerns about it. We had other Rotarians, but let me say that once the board of directors for the Morning Rotary did approve the setting up Doug McNeil as a nonprofit 501c3 fund account, we have raised about $20,000 from individuals all over the valley, many Rotarians, very, very wonderful response to a man that has given so much. I didn't get a chance to highlight the fact that he did write as a historian, the Monte Sereno History Project. He's been on many television programs, lots of media coverage. As you may know, he received not only the Jefferson Award in 2019, but the National Jefferson Award in 2020. And he continues to lead the Lighting for Literacy effort, although because of COVID-19, there has been a bit of quiet, and you can understand that. He reads using the use of a computer, through the use of his eyes. Tremendous effort. His wife said one thing that I do want to share. She said, fortunately, we're able to have a primary care doctor, 2 respiratory therapists, a pulmonologist, and a cardiologist that visit Doug at home. The annual cost is not covered by insurance. It is $250,000. The financial drain is one our family struggles with, as Doug is blessed with long-term stability. I sincerely appreciate anything, any effort that the Monte Sereno Council and certainly as residents can extend for helping the McNeil family. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Glad we could hear from you. We do have a additional comment in the chat box, I think, that we received from Mr. Rudin. Let's see if we can read that.
That's just for the council members.
Oh, okay. That's just for council. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's go ahead and see kind of where we stand right now. I think we'll close public comment again. and we will come back and let's continue council discussion on this. So I believe Ms. Lawler, I'm not sure if you're keeping score here. I think I heard an agreement to what I was suggesting, but I didn't keep it on my scorecard for what exactly we were looking at. Do you have comments?
Yeah, I do. I do actually. So you suggested that we reduce the grant to Los Gatos Music and Arts from 5K to 3,000, using that additional 2,000 to spread across Kiwanis, art docents, and veterans. Is that correct?
More or less, but possibly weighting veterans a little bit more. Certainly, I'm not sure what our fund request was from each of the others, but we wouldn't want to exceed anyone's request.
Okay, so veterans perhaps 2,500, maybe 1,000. Or 3,000, and then that would put Kiwanis and art docents both at 2.
And Kiwanis had requested 2.
They had requested 2.
Art docents had been 1,500 in the past, and it's probably appropriate to consider bringing up to 2 if they're going to be making up time post-COVID in the schools.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So then we have 20.
If you can run through the entire scoreboard, that'd be
helpful. Sure. Mayor Lutholp, are you going to do that?
Well, let's see if I can recreate it as I go along with your help. 5,000 to KCAT.
Yes.
Los Gatos Music and Arts 2,000.
I think you said 3,000.
Oh, sorry, I did. I read 3 as a 2. Thank you.
Okay.
Los Gatos Music and Arts 3,000. Art docents 2,000.
2,000.
Veterans, we're at 3,000.
3,000. Yes.
Yes, at 3. And what else did we have? We have
Kiwanis
at 2,000.
At 2,000. And West Valley at 5.
West Valley at 5,000.
And that should bring us to 20.
Yep, that's what I've got here.
With I think 500 left over. Is that right?
No, we lost the 500 in the mix.
Got it. Okay.
But we will do some more research and come back and see about the possibility of something special for Doug McNeil and that, or perhaps providing publicity for that if we can't, if it turns out that we can't do something directly but are allowed to provide publicity.
Yeah, for Doug McNeil and Rotary, we have traditionally annually donated, I think, 3,000 to 5,000 to the Rotary Foundation for different projects. So that may be if there's a concern about giving gifts to a private individual, and we can't, then we can't. But as a Rotary Foundation, they can use it for Rotary functions, which they generally do. So maybe we can invite her to go ahead and submit later on a grant from the Rotary Foundation to provide for all the funds that are probably attributable and are not going to be used for private funding.
Okay, Councilmember Mekachek, you have your hand up. And you're on mute. There you are.
Sorry about that. Could we consider an application, as I believe Councilmember Lawler said, or someone else, to the Los Gatos Rotary General Fund, and then they can use that as they wish? And perhaps that's what Mayor Pro Tem Elahi was referring to. But then I also think that we should consider what Councilmember Turner said, that we're capping ourselves at 20,000. So if we distribute all the 20,000 now, then we're going to be over that. So I just thought that was worthy of some discussion.
All right, Councilmember Turner, did you have your hand back up?
Yes. Can we go through it? Because I don't, from my math, we don't have an extra $500. So it's 533,225, right?
That's right. The 500 got absorbed into veterans, basically, as we modified this.
Right. So we've spent 20,000.
Correct.
Okay.
And so
Thank
we
you.
need to, if we want to either set aside some money for possible consideration of a general Rotary application, we need to pull it back off of something, or we can consider going over if it came in later, but it would be a special consideration. Councilmember Mekachuk.
Maybe we could pull $500 out of 4 items or 6 items, and then put that as $2,000 to $3,000 for consideration of Los Gatos Morning Rotary, and then we'll be at our 20,000.
Yeah, Mr. Leonardis, do you have, we had in the past given to Morning Rotary, is that correct? And do you have that number of what had been past general Morning Rotary donations?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. I could not locate any information on that. I only went back to 2018, 19, 20, but I didn't recall seeing anything for the Rotary.
Yeah, there was a clause for crabs program, I think, that they had last year. And they usually have some music stuff or other stuff like that. So it might be under that heading.
Okay. That might have been what it was. I do recall, because last year that event was canceled, but I can go back and check. Let's see if we can pull it up.
Yeah, so that sounds appropriate. Just reserve about 2,500, and they can submit an application to justify the need for the 2,500. We can consider it, but we could pull off about 500 from across the board, or at least we could leave the Kiwanis Club at 2,000. They're the lower number anyway, but take another 500 from other sources.
So I did want to mention, however, that we did make an announcement, and in fairness of the process, we didn't get any applications directly for things like the Cause for the Cause this year.
Yeah, no, this year we have not because they're not doing it this year, so yeah, that's why.
So and
there are other projects. There have other projects that are out there, so that's why they would submit an application, and we could consider it on this matter.
Councilmember Lawler.
And
yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, you know, the bottom line is, unfortunately, the Rotary submitted an application today, and in the name of the Doug McNeil Fund, which does not necessarily fit our grant making criteria. So I think it's wise that we go ahead and grant the applicants that applied on time with the funds that we have discussed. And then we have our attorney look into whether or not it is okay for us to support the Doug McNeil Fund, or if we can in some other way support that. I think we should just move ahead with what we have. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Turner, did you still have your hand up or no?
No.
No. Okay. Not sure if you can take it down or not, but
Oh,
there you go. Now it's down. Okay. Yeah, I'm with Councilmember Lawler on this, that timeliness and completeness and following the rules is worth something. And I think that allocation that we've put together of the 20,000 is appropriate. We're going into the budget season. If we as a council want to create some more set-asides, create some more opportunities, that's fine. We can certainly look at that as we look into the budget, but also we would need to open it up again so that anyone else who hadn't put their application in time could look at getting it in. Those are my thoughts on it. So do we have a motion to adopt the grants as described? That would be 5,000 to KCAT, Los Gatos Music and Arts 3,000, 2,000 to arts persons, 3,000.
somebody, we can hear a dog bark.
Sorry, those are mine.
3,000 to the veterans, 2,000 to Kiwanis, and West Valley Community Service 5,000.
So moved. Oh, I'll second.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so the first was Councilmember Turner with the second by Councilmember Lawler. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Makachek,
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
I would probably vote for the motion, but I would like to have a clarification that council is not denying to support Doug McNeil because he's an honorable member of the community, and that the application can be submitted again, and we'll take a look at it. There was some issue of timeliness. I understand the application was submitted, but apparently the grant application itself did not go out because of some confusion with emails. And then the second issue is whether it's appropriate for us to support an individual or not. And I understand, but our attorney has basically advises that that's not appropriate for the city to be giving charity to a particular individual. And I understand that, but just need to clarify that so it doesn't look like we're not supporting such an honorable member of our community. And so I'll vote yes on the motion.
And Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And certainly for Doug McNeil, we do recognize his huge role in the community and appreciate, and we'll look for opportunities to be supportive. And again, I'm all for publicity as well. If we can't support directly, if we can push for publicity, we can look into that and then see what we can do. So thank you, everyone. And we will now move to item number 5. This is a study session, continued study session for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. And I'm going to go ahead and before we go to staff report and further discussion, I would like to see if there are any members of the public who wish to weigh in. Let's open public comment now. Later on, we could consider reopening public comment, but I think this will work a little more smoothly if we do the public comment up front and then move to the study session. So are there any members of the public wishing to speak on the budget study session item? So please raise your hands. Seeing none, I will close public comment, and now let's open the study session. Mr. Leonardis or Mr. Samaranos, do we have comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do have Mr. Samaranos, who will be answering the questions which were received by council in between this meeting and our last meeting, as well as addressing the comments that were received from the last study session about adding the additional column to the budget reports. And I will just turn it over to Mr. Samaranos because he has all the information at hand and is ready to discuss.
Thank you for having me here today. I'd like to get access to sharing my screen, if I may.
All right, we'll work on getting you properly promoted and let you know when that is available as far as we can tell.
Yes.
It's available now, Ronald.
Okay, thank you. Are you seeing on your screen? Let's see, it's page 1 that says revenues. Is that what you're seeing on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. So essentially, the second proposal of the FY 21-22 budget incorporated all the specific changes and that was addressed at our last meeting with City Council. And that includes adding a column that shows the CIP for the one-time events that happened in our current fiscal year. So on the first 3 columns on the left, you have the operating budget, the CIPs, the OPEB, the one-time events or projects that occurred. But in addition to that, I revised the mid-year budget to be, or the mid-year original budget to be a mid-year revised budget was essentially a reforecast of what I expect revenues and expenditures to be for this fiscal year. And then I went in and took a look at what were those one-time project items and created that specific column. On the FY 2021-22 budget side, I revised that to more information that I got after our May 4th session and incorporated those changes in those figures as well. I also, I guess, in just going down the revenue side, on the property taxes, I revised that figure to reflect what, to reflect the Mount Talbot development project. Essentially, I added 100,000 to those tax revenues, but I'm maintaining the 5% reduction in tax revenues versus last year. Now that's very conservative, since in looking at the tax report from the assessor's office that was released last May 4th, it shows that property taxes for our city will be about 2.2 million. That's forecasted for this fiscal year. So in looking at the estimate that I have there, I still believe that's a conservative figure. But we'll know what the assessor will release a report as to what the allocation will be by municipality later on this year. On the license and permit side, nothing changed there. Basically remained the same. I just want to highlight that of the licensing permits, of that 1 million that's reported there for the forecast, 347,000 was related to the Montalvo project. So hence my budget for this year, or next year, I'm sorry, is reduced by that amount. Franchise tax remained the same. Intergovernmental remained the same. Other revenues in that figure, in the 246,000 figure, 146,000 is attributed to the Montalvo Oaks project. So in the new forecast for the FY 2021-22 budget, I removed that figure in the operating budget side. Let's see. And that's pretty much all the changes that were made on the revenue side. I think what I wanted to highlight is when you take a look at the column that says FY 2021 mid-year revised operating budget, in total, that revenue of 4.1 million essentially includes about $500,000 of fees from the Montalvo project. So when you discount that, the 4.1 million of operating budget revenues in this year, in looking at 2021-22, you have an estimate of 3.5 million in terms of revenues for the city. That's all I have on the revenue side. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I was going to suggest we stop here and see if there are questions on the revenue changes you've implemented. Anyone wishing to bring up anything further or questions on this? Mr. Nekachuk.
I'll just make a comment saying thank you for making that, for pulling the numbers out of it. And to summarize what you're saying is basically our 4.1 goes down to 3.5 because of Montalvo. And we're seeing our ongoing property taxes go up by 100K because of Montalvo. So
yes,
that's
good.
Correct.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, Mr. Morris, I had a question. What was our revenue for the previous year? the 1920 fiscal year? Was that 3.4 or 5 or close to that? Do you have that number by any chance?
Let's see. Sorry, I gotta go to my reports here. $4.2 million total.
So why are we off by 600,000? I mean, we didn't have Montalvo Oaks that year also. Was there something else unusual going on? And maybe you can provide us details offline, but it would be nice to see previous year, this year, next year.
I'm sorry, I read the wrong column. It was 3.7.
It was 3.7, so we're down by about 300,000, or about 250,000 from the year before.
Yeah, approximately 342.
All right, maybe offline you can send me the information why that is.
100,000.
Yeah, and in the prior years, we hadn't split out any of those unusual events. So that's really what we were getting at by changing these revenue streams a little bit so that it would highlight what was unusual versus what is ongoing. So when you look at 2019, it's very possible there were some unusual events in 2019 as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on the revenue side before we have Mr. Salmanos move on? Nope, seeing none, let's go ahead and see what else you got for us.
Shifting to expenditures. On the expenditure side, I again split the ongoing operating revised budget as well as the splitting out of the one-time events. So just going from the top down, on the personnel side, we have a figure of 740,000. That includes 50,000 of OPEP expenses, and then of course the 639 or 640 of expenses relating to the unfunded pension liabilities that we funded last year or this fiscal year. So in looking at this coming budget, I estimated a 55,000 for the unfunded liability piece. That's just simply an estimate, since last year that component was 49,000 for the unfunded pension liabilities. Let's see, going down the list, no other changes were made other than in equipment. That was a change to an increase of 57,000 for a project related to a computer server and cabling project for the city. Nothing else has changed. So from that, when you take the revenues and the expenses, on the operating side, we're basically a break even in terms of margins going forward that's contributing or withdrawing from our reserves. On the capital projects, probably about 2.7 million, which would be drawn from our reserves to fund the various CIP projects that we have slated in this budget. So are there any questions on the expenditure side?
I have a question, please.
Okay.
Are you going to go over page 3 of 14? I think you're on 5. Are you going to go back to 3 of 14? You see that 500,000 there on construction permits?
Let's see, page 3 of 14.
Yes, this page that you're on. Oh, you just moved it. It was, I can't see.
It's page 3 and 14.
We're on page 4 now. You need to go up
Oh,
one
yeah,
page.
you're on page 4, the previous one.
This one. Okay.
Yes, yes, this 500,000. Can you explain how you got that figure?
Let me go into my detail here. Bear with me. Sorry, going into my notes here. Okay, so essentially I took the run rate of this year of what we had projects ongoing, and I reduced the estimate by 187, about 200,000 to reflect the income from Montalvo Oaks project.
Could you say that again, please? I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
I took a look at the run rate for this year on the 685, and I reduced the estimate for next year budget by 187, or 200,000, for reflecting the Montalvo Oaks project.
So the permits for Montalvo project for last year was $185,000
Let's see.
over.
Yeah, about 187.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it was 147,000.
And how did you get the 500,000 from 147?
So I took a look at the run rate for this year, the 685, and I reduced it by approximately 187, but I rounded it to 500. So that reflects a going run rate of this year.
Okay.
Activity minus the Montalvo $185,000 revenues.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question as well. On page 5, under law enforcement, you've estimated $120,000 less this coming year. Does that reflect, or maybe Mr. Leonardis might know, does that reflect the 6 vacancies that are on the police department right now that Los Gatos may decide not to fill this coming year? Do we know?
Well, on the expenditure side for the police, I simply estimated what's our contract now and just increased it by 3%. there's no specific bid or.
So there's
contract that I've seen.
there's no reason for that. There's no tangible reason for that lower number.
See, this is,
So our expenditures will go from 1.17 to 1.04 million. And I
I'm
know
sorry,
that
what
there's,
page are we on?
I'm sorry, page 5,
Page 5.
under law enforcement. It's budgeted to be 10% less this year. And I wanted to know if that reflects the vacancies that are currently in the police department.
It comes from a lot of things. Let me see what the detail is here. So that comes from, I guess, on the base case of our contract this year, that's at 920,000. And on the disbursements from the COPS grant, it's 248 this year, totaling 1.2 million. Next
Okay.
year, I increased the contract by 3%, going from 920 to 947. And then the disbursement of COPS grant, I reduced it back to the 100,000 that it normally is. Because
All right,
every year we always make provisions for 100,000, and then sometimes they'll give us more than that. And so that really what accounts for the difference.
all right, got
So on
it.
the
Thank
police
you.
contract side, it's 3% up, and then on the disbursements COPS grant, it's reduced back to 100,000.
Got it. Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Elahi, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess Los Gatos is going through a cut down in police expenses. And I'm trying to see if our contract requires us to pay a specific amount every year, or is it based on a pro rata share of what the actual police expenses are? Because we're sharing with Los Gatos. And if they're cutting down on the police payroll, then I would think that we would also have a pro rata reduction unless we want to pick up the extra tab for what they don't pay. So it'll be good to figure out what's going on with the pro rata share. Are we stuck with paying a specific amount every year, regardless of whether there's 2 people in the police force or whether there's 200, or whether it depends on the actual payroll that the police department is billing for? If you could, if you have any information on that, that would be helpful, Mr. Leonardis.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We have a contract with the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department, and it is quite extensive, and I can get a copy of that over to council. I know that tonight on their agenda, they have an item, and there was some discussion online and things about foregoing hiring some positions or reducing some positions. I don't believe that is a certain outcome this evening. However, I don't know if that would have any direct impact on our contract. Every year we get a bill from them, essentially, or a new kind of, they increase the cost a little bit. I think this year they hit us with a 2% increase in the cost for the coming year. Last year, I think they hit us with a 4% increase over our previous contract price. But I'm happy to get a copy of the entire police agreement for each and every council member for review if need be. But to answer your question, there should be no direct correlation between if they cut or they forego hiring positions and then a reduction in our price. I don't think we would realize any savings because of that.
Well, I guess that's something we should look for. I mean, if they're only paying for two police people and we are still paying our $1 million, that would not be appropriate. So Mr. Rudin maybe can look at that also. But let's see what Los Gatos does, first of all. If they do something like that, then obviously it's important for us to make sure we're continuing to pay our prorational share and not subsidizing the Los Gatos part of the police department.
Right. And Councilmember Lawler? You've still got a hand up.
I'm so sorry. I will put that down. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, any other questions here as we talk about the changes on the expenditure side and what we're seeing? Yes, Mr. Nekacek.
Thank you. couple of comments. First of all, following up on the law enforcement line item, I think that our contract sets out a service level, and if Los Gatos PD chooses to change that service level down, then I think that they're not meeting the terms of the contract. But and I don't think they do that. And I think that Mr. Leonardis, if you're able to distribute that, that would be fantastic. As an aside, I would be kind of wondering what's in Los Gatos budget for revenues from Monte Sereno. So that would probably be an interesting item to see. And then I'd like to turn to page 10 of 14 under the city attorney. I see we've gone from the general retainer has gone up to 111.2, and our litigation is at 60K. And I don't think it's should be discussed what's in our budget in a general session. I think that should be a session. But I don't feel comfortable with that 60K as a budget line item. So I'm not sure if we can discuss this in a closed session and not take any action on it, but I'd like to understand what's in that number at some point in time. But I wouldn't want any potential litigants to understand what's in our budget.
Yeah, I think I brought this one up a year ago or so with a similar question about what and why we have that. And I recall that the answer was that is really a best guesstimate based on past issues, but that it really has nothing to do. It's not something that we're having much ability to budget for. We either spend what we have to spend, or we don't. If we don't, we have various contracts in terms of the hourly rates and who we pay. And in the past, at least, that has not been an item that has to do with settlements or exactly how we anticipate litigation is going to go. It's more of a placeholder that gets us an idea what's happened historically. But again, that may be something for us to discuss further.
That's also my understanding as well.
I'd like to see that zero.
We all would. So let's bring that about by making sure we do our jobs right. And well, we can't make everybody happy. I guess that's really the problem. But the hangover from before continues from many, many years ago. And the more we clean that up, the less we'll have it in that budget, and it will be what it is. It's not that we get to spend it. If we just because we put it there doesn't mean we spend it. All right. Other questions, comments? Does that, Mr. Samaranos, did you have other things that you wanted to point out? Or?
No, so then how that flows to our reserves, I guess I have this here, where in doing all those projects, our reserves will be depleted by, page here. Same as last time. It goes from 5.8 million to 3.1 million, a reduction of 2.6. Then I addressed last time. City Manager Leonardis mentioned that there were two potential funding sources: the HEROES Act for 600,000 and the Federal Highway Trust Fund dollars for 500,000, 1.2 million, so that if we are able to get that funding, then if we did all that's stated here in this budget, we go from 5.8 million to 4.2 million.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Turner. And you're on, Councilmember Turner, you're on mute.
Yes, Mr. Samaronis, if you could go back to page 7.
Page
Please.
7.
So you have under retirement employer for 2021, 814,806. See that?
I'm sorry.
01625T, as in Tom.
Okay.
Retirement employer, 814,806. Then that figure drops to 137,000. What accounts for this reduction? Are we merely deferring payments? Or will they come back with interest as unfunded pension liability? Could you explain that, please?
Oh, yeah. So that you're referring to this figure here on 01625.
Yes.
Yeah, so in this year, this fiscal year, we funded the OPEB, unfunded pension liabilities. And then this year, we're gonna fund, I guess, the 55,000 for current year, or I guess it would be last year's unfunded pension liabilities. That makes sense.
So we're not expecting the large hit like that 739 was, unless the fund screws up and changes the rules and hits us with a new and unexpected unfunded liability, which would not be a surprise, but it hasn't happened, so it's not something that we need to address in the budget. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, you know, the markets have been as it was over the last couple of months. So I don't know what that particular hit would be for this fiscal year, other than my estimate for 55,000. But once I get the definitive figure from helpers, I'll certainly update the budget for that.
If you don't mind, I have another question on page 11, please. Okay, it appears that we will draw down our reserves by 2.6 million to do the Rinconada pavement project and the work on the annex, right? So we are required, though, to maintain a minimum of 1 year's operating expenses in reserves. I think that's what our code says. So will we still meet that requirement with these expenditures?
See, our reserves, it says expenditure 3.5 million. Let's see.
Well, it looks like we're going to draw down our reserves by 2.6.
Yeah, so
2.6 million to do the
right.
Rinconada pavement project, right?
Yeah, so basically our reserves will go down to 3.1 million.
Yes.
Without the benefit of those two funding sources that.
Yes. So it looks like however, we're required to maintain a minimum of 1 year of operating expenses in our reserve. How are we going to do that?
Well, it would be dependent upon getting these two funding sources.
Okay, so question for you. Can you give us a heads up if we're not able to get that funding? Because if we're not able to get that funding and we hit our reserves, then we are not operating according to our code. So I at least would like to know whether it looks like our reserves will be back to 4.3 at the end of the budget period. However, this is dependent on getting that 1.1 million from the HEROES Act, right? And the Federal Highway Trust Fund.
That's correct.
So I guess I'm reluctant to spend this much money all at once. I think we will be in difficult times financially, and it would just be prudent to maintain a cushion. However, I agree with City Manager Leonardes when he made the argument last week or 2 weeks ago that we're going to see significant inflation. And if we delay this project, they could only cost more in the future. However, I'm also hesitant to essentially spend this much money, not knowing whether or not we're going to get the HEROES Act and the Federal Highway Trust Fund. So those are my comments about the budget.
Yeah.
Can I follow up with that really quickly?
Yes.
Do you happen to know when we'll find out whether or not we'll get those funds?
Steve?
So thank you for the question, Councilmember Lawler. I was on a meeting with Anna Eshu's office about a month ago, and we were discussing this. What I think the intent of the budget is to, demonstrate where it could come from, and we can put it in there. And as we did last year with the building, we took the 600,000, we allocated it towards the building. We haven't constructed the building yet, but we forecast that we will be receiving the revenue. We forecast we will be potentially spending the revenue without actually potentially getting to that point until we receive the funds. Obviously, we do have a new reserve policy that, as Councilmember Turner mentioned, we have to have 1 year worth of our operating expenses. And it's possible that we could do one project and still maintain that reserve requirements and then wait for the funds to, those two potential funding sources to arrive before we do the second project. I think that Engineer Jessica Kahn was hoping to get the streets project over on Xena, the law working out of the $2 million streets project, started this summer. So I think that would be an important thing to consider for the council. And that would not necessarily violate our reserve policy. But
okay. That would be good, I think. If you can at least alert the council when we're about to spend that we're going to be in violation of a policy, that would help us make a decision to say yes, no, yes, we want to go ahead, violate it and change the policy, or just wait a while. So those are my comments. Thank you.
thank you.
Well, one option too, if I may speak on that particular Ricanada neighborhood project, this 2 million, split it in over 2 fiscal years, 1 million this year and 1 million next.
All right, anything further, Mr. Samaranos, council members?
So that's pretty much all I had on this side. Any questions?
Mr. Mekachek, you've got your hand up.
So as I'm looking at this page, I see the negative 12K there. Could you just scroll up just a little bit, please, so I can see the header? So what this is showing is that our ongoing expenditures will equal our ongoing revenues in this version of the budget. And then if we include the one-time capital expenditures, that's going to be a net outflow of 1.5 million. So therefore, that's why our reserves are going down to, in this scenario, to 4.2, 4.25. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's assuming, again, we get those pending funding sources, the HEROES Act and the Federal Highway Trust Fund dollars.
Right, and then if you could, it would be helpful on this page to show that what our 1 year reserve should be, that threshold. So if you could scroll up, or if you, what did we say our expenditures are in that column, that ongoing column?
3.5.
3.5, okay, so that would be a good number to see on that last page, because then we'd kind of be able to see where we are relative to our policy. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawler.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Samaranos and staff for this excellent staff report and your conservative budget approach. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
I do have a question, please.
Yep.
Mr. Samaranos, page 3, you have the title of the page is Second Proposal Fiscal Year 2021 to 2022 Budget. It says page 3.
One more up.
This one?
No.
No.
Yeah, that's the one.
You have something at the bottom that says 3,155,000. Not that page 3. I think you have another set of documents, 4 pages.
Oh, that's 4 pages.
Yeah.
What does the top say?
It says second proposal fiscal year 2021-22 budget. And then you have revenues 4.8 million, 0.4 million higher or 9% versus 2020 to 21 mid-year revised budget.
This one?
Yeah, but I don't, no, that's revenue. The fund balances.
Oh, fund balances, okay. Sorry.
So you had something in there that says total all funds.
Oh, yes, that's the next page. This one.
Okay, so my numbers don't coincide with this. You have 3,089,092,
Right.
and I show 3 million, and I show 3,155,465. Are these the reserves?
This is the ending
Is
balance.
the reserves 3,099,000 or 3,155,000?
Well, we start at 5.8 here. I don't know if you can see.
Yes.
5.8, and then we reduce it by the sum of these two.
Yes. So what's this 3 million here? Is this the reserves without the
Yes,
HEROES Act, right?
Yes, that's the reserves without the HEROES Act.
Okay.
And then I take that number.
And then you added the HEROES Act and you come
Right.
up with 4,310,000, or I guess you changed it here.
Yes.
4,244,000.
Yes.
Okay. So when we hit that 3 million, that's when we want to know that, hey, we're about to
Violate the code.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Gotcha.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Samaranos, anything further?
Oh,
on
I'm
this?
sorry. That's my report on this side.
Okay. Did you have anything further that you wanted to discuss this evening?
I did not. I mean, I have if you wanted to see the details of the capital improvement projects, I have a sheet that shows that. I can share that with the screen. It's part of my report. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you can see that, but just totaling the deficit that we will be drawing from our reserve, the 2.7 million here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but essentially this is a line by line itemization of the respective projects, the funding sources, the expenditures, and then what the net impact is to our reserves. all in one page. So as you can see, the Rinconada neighborhood project is the biggest piece of it.
All right. Yeah, it looks like we are going to have to pay attention to options for staging things or prioritizing Rinconada or something, because I think as a principle, we've already, prior councils have reduced the reserves quite dramatically over the years and then used the reserves to get rid of that unfunded pension liability every time the moving target changes on that. So this is something that we want to look at. We certainly don't want to get ahead of ourselves on spending such that we're violating those already reduced 1 year rule that we've set for ourselves. So I think as we finalize the budget, we probably need to make sure that when we're getting to approving the budget, that we stage things such that we can put a stop if we don't get the fundings that we're hoping for. But we're ready to move as quickly as we can if it looks like we're getting those fundings. Or, as you mentioned, splitting the Rinconada project. It's very possible that that is going to stretch over 2 years, that we could allocate a large portion of the budget to this year and pick up the remainder in the next fiscal year. Capital projects often use that to spread it out. So that's something I think that staff, you all can look at that with Ms. Khan and the budget, and as we get towards finalizing, to make sure that we're following our own rules.
Okay.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, is that your hand up?
Yeah. Thank you for recognizing me. It's a pretty complicated process, and thank you for putting these numbers together, Mr. Prowse. That's a lot of work, and hopefully we can understand it as we go along. One other thing, and as Councilmember Turner requested that you let us know, give us a heads up if you're running into that 3 million, I guess, floor. But the same token, I expect that property tax revenue might be a little bit higher. So let us know if there's a significant change in revenue, which will allow us to give us some breathing space if you see the numbers coming higher. The other thing I was curious and interested in to see if we can expand our base, our property tax base. There are unincorporated county pockets right next to where Monte Sereno is. And maybe we should be looking at to see if it's worth it for Monte Sereno to incorporate them and bring them into the city, whether they'll result in giving us more revenue. Obviously, there'll be some expenditures involved with bringing them into the city, like roads and other items. So if Mr. Leonardo, you can figure out a procedure where we can at least look at it and then decide whether it's in the interest of the city to try to incorporate these pockets into our city or not. And that might give us some more revenue that we can work with.
Thank you, guys. Mayor Pro Tem, and that is something that Los Gatos did when I was on the council. There was 52 county pockets, and they annexed, I think, 48 of them. Some of them were not cost effective to annex because they had 6 miles of road for like 2 houses or something. But the ones that were cost effective, we did bring over, and that was a source of revenue. So that's quite an undertaking. And we can probably look at that as a recommendation during the strategic goals session, which we'll be having on June 1st, and or a future council agenda item of what would be involved with a annexation of county pockets.
It may be helpful if you can identify them to see what is there at this point. Whether we're talking about some meaningful pockets or something is just not worth the effort.
Right, Mr. Mekachek, did you were waving your hand earlier? Did you want to come back?
No, I'm good. I think that this is a good iteration of the budget, and Mayor Luthold, you had anticipated this previously, and I think that the pace we're going at is going to get us to the right place on June the 1st.
Yeah, and thank you for making that point. I want to add to staff, thank you so much for your hard work, for starting early, for answering our questions, for making this all so clear. Certainly, the best budgeting process we've had to date with my experience with the council. So thank you for that. Councilmember Turner. Oh, no, that's not you. That was my hand hovering over you. Sorry. It's always confusing when Zoom does that. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Sounds like we can close the study session, and then we are prepared next to adjourn to closed session. That will be conference with legal counsel, existing litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9 sub D sub 1, case name Shakar versus City of Monte Sereno. So let's go ahead and adjourn to closed session. If you can either be certain that we are all muted, it's probably better if we drop off and then rejoin this. So let's go ahead and move to our closed session, dropping off of here. But Mr. Leonardis or Ms. Radcliffe will keep this open so we can come back when we're done with closed session. All right, it looks like we are back to a quorum. Councilmember Elahi is not going to rejoin us for the rest of the session. So I think we're all here and ready to go forward. Ms. Radcliffe, are you here and ready to go forward?
Yes, I am here. Sorry about that.
No worries, just wanted to make sure I have you here. Okay, thank you. So reconvening to open session after the closed session, the action taken is that the council has agreed to authorize Burke William Sorensen to represent the city in regard to the existing litigation. So now moving on to committee and commission reports. Anyone have a committee or commission report they want to report on? Mr. Makachuk.
Sure. I wanted to kind of summarize the increases that we're going to see to our constituents' billings for West Valley Collection and Recycling, West Valley Clean Water, Silicon Valley Clean Energy and the PGE rates, San Jose water rates, and Valley water rates. It seems like everything's going up. And the key thing that I'd like to zero in on is the San Jose water rates. But I think I'd like to discuss that a little bit under future agenda items. But I could talk about it now for a moment if you wish.
Sure, sometimes we end up combining some of these matters here at the end. So if you think in committee and commission reports that's appropriate, feel free to go ahead.
Sure. There was a PUC hearing last week on the San Jose water rates. And I believe one of our citizens, Mr. Turner, spoke at that hearing, and I spoke as well as a city official. I raised the point that the city of Monte Sereno had sent a letter in, and apparently that was discussed after the hearing ended. So that was a positive thing. And in terms of future agenda items, do you want me to meld that in right now, Mayor Luthel?
That's fine. Let's go ahead and talk about your future agenda items, and Mr. Leonardis and Ms. Radcliffe will pay attention.
Okay. So what I would propose, and this is based on conversations that I had at the PUC, it seems like if an elected official and or a municipality such as the city of Monte Sereno submits a letter or stating what their belief is and what their findings are on behalf of its citizens, then that letter carries a significant amount of weight relative to an individual basically simply complaining about an increase in rates, because that happens all the time. And what I would propose is that we put as a future agenda item for the next meeting, the June 1st meeting, consideration of another letter. And what I would like to do, what I would volunteer to do, is put a draft together of that letter, for council to consider, and basically opposing the rates. And I can go through the reasoning that would be in the letter at the next meeting. But essentially what I have heard from people that have contacted me as a city council member is that there's no incentive to reduce water usage under the proposed rates. And Valley Water asked for a voluntary 25% reduction in water usage. And, so if all of the citizens of Monte Sereno go through that pain of investing in low flow toilets, changing their landscaping and investing in other things, and there's no reduction in their expenses, there's no incentive to do that. And I truly believe that we're going to be in another drought, and San Jose Water Company should have variable rates, not a fixed rate, so that people have an incentive to invest to reduce their water consumption. That's the essence of it. And I would I'd volunteer to write a draft letter for council to consider and discuss at the next meeting.
Sounds good. And I agree. Let's bring this back in a timely manner. So we've got a couple of votes to go ahead and keep that on the radar, and appreciate your involvement and your willingness to take the lead on putting some of those terms together. Ms. Lawler.
If I may add, you might want to invite, may I suggest that you invite Valley Water again to talk about how they handle their rates. There is an incentive system built in, and it might be wise to have them just give us a little presentation on that.
Yes, they're applying for an increase in their rates, and their increase is a straight pass through to through San Jose Water.
Yes, I understand that. I am on the Valley Water Commission. So yes, and we did in fact ask them to not raise rates this year. So we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think one of the concerns that we've heard expressed, and I'm not sure about which water in which way, but I think it's Valley Water, the request, or no, it was San Jose Water, the Connecticut folks. We should start calling them the Connecticut folks, because they no longer consider themselves local. They're worried about their shareholders, not about us. But last time there was water savings, they came back and complained they weren't making enough money because we were saving water. And so they asked for special drought increases because we hadn't used as much water during the drought. So again, those are things that, Mr. Mekachek, you can kind of research the history and see how to best continue to keep this in front of the CPUC.
I would be delighted to do so.
And that is what our citizens are asking us to do, obviously. I haven't heard a citizen say anything contrary to that. So, okay, good. Any other committee commission reports, Mr. Mekachek?
No, that's all I have to report.
Okay, great, thank you. And for the record, I'll note that Councilmember Turner had to drop off as well, but we still have our quorum here, so we will continue forward. Ms. Lawler, any committee commission reports?
I don't, but I have a comment.
Okay, then let's move to council member comments.
All right. Well, as you may already know, 75% of the county residents have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The goal is to reach 85%. 80% of residents of Monte Sereno have been vaccinated, which is great news. And tomorrow, Wednesday, we will be moving into the yellow tier, which is the least restrictive tier, which means that businesses will be allowed to resume pretty much as normal while still maintaining certain reporting requirements and social distancing requirements. So great job, Monte Sereno. And as far as mask guidelines, the state is following the CDC guidance on that. However, they would like to make it official as of June 15th to allow more time for vaccinations to happen. And that's my comment. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Mekachek, any further comments that you wanted to add under the comment section?
I have no further comments.
All right, thank you. And I don't have any. So city manager's report, Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll start with working off of what Councilmember Lawler just mentioned. There will be a time, probably in the not too distant future, where we can go back to our live meetings. And I was waiting for direction from the state of California, the governor, at how they suspended the Brown Act. And I thought once they reinstate that, and or possibly August 3rd being the first meeting where we could potentially, or we should be back in live meetings at that point in time, if the council decides they would like to do that, regardless of what the governor might say with the Brown Act by that point in time. But I'm pretty sure that will be probably reinstated. So something to consider for the future. August 3rd, probably going back to live meetings. And it's kind of interesting because we've been working with Zoom, and I think it might be interesting to explore a hybrid type of a meeting where if the public can still comment via Zoom, participate in our hearing via Zoom, even if we are live. So we'll explore that going forward as well. Tomorrow in Los Gatos, there's a police swearing in meeting. You're all invited. So I hope you can all be there if you want to be there, if you have time. It's a great meeting to attend. I think they have about 7 new officers being sworn in and promoted. And last but not least, we are going to be receiving 300 red emergency tote bags that have SCC alert information, other information for those. We will be getting the word out to the public and offering those for distribution, and probably handing them out at our annual city picnic, which we discussed a little bit earlier, which is tentatively scheduled for August 21st. We still do not have the information from the county yet where we could book the picnic ground, but we're watching every day. As soon as we have the chance to book it, we're going to book it. And that concludes my comments.
Great, thank you. So turning to future agenda items, the one that I have that we haven't discussed yet, Mr. Leonardis, if you can keep an eye on this as to what's developing, and then bring it back at the next meeting or whenever appropriate. Some things to give us a forum to discuss openly and with the public what's going on with Los Gatos police funding. I think that caught everybody a bit by surprise this week. Their meeting was happening simultaneous with our meeting tonight, and obviously there will be developments, but we may want to get it on our agenda so that people can weigh in and we can have some formal discussion if there's information for us to discuss.
Okay. I also wanted to mention, during the meeting this evening, we sent over to all the council members a complete copy of the police contract, as well as the annual document they send us that shows the increase. Typically, it's an increase in the charge for the police services that we use for budgeting purposes that Mr. Samaranos used in his report. So we sent those 2 documents over this evening to all 5 council members for your information. And regarding what Council Member Mekachek said about the water letter, our next meeting, June 1st, is our annual strategic goals meeting. So the focus of the evening, primary focus, will be that item as the only agenda item, but we could probably put the water item in after the strategic goals item. If Mr. Mekachek has it drafted, that should be a relatively short hearing. We could put that on the agenda that evening.
Great, and maybe the 2 of you can coordinate, if Mr. Mekachek, if it's not urgent in terms of where the deadlines fall in our following meeting, work with Mr. Leonardis about whether it makes more sense to put it in at the end of strategic planning or at the next meeting, which might actually be an overfilled meeting already anyway. So whichever works.
All right.
All right, I'd like to follow up with your future agenda item. I agree. I think we need to have a conversation about police funding, and particularly since we share these services with Los Gatos. If there's any question as to whether or not to fund certain things, I think we should be at least part of the conversation.
Yep, sounds good. And being surprised by these things coming up randomly out of a finance committee when we pay a major portion of the budget and seem to have had no consultation whatsoever or even heads up on it doesn't seem right.
Right, agreed.
I will say as a comment on that as a property owner in Los Gatos, I sent notes to several council members saying that I did not support any reduction in funding to the police. And I think it's a little more complicated than simply having the police budget cut. It has to do with freezing staffing at an overall level. So the responses that I received indicated that several of the council members did not support cutting the police budget. So I think it's complicated. I am very interested in what happened tonight at the Los Gatos Town Council meeting.
Yeah, well, obviously, we're going to need to get more information before we can figure out, but we need to look at it as an agenda item so we can have a conversation formally, legally, and with our public.
And I do plan on attending the swearing in tomorrow.
Great. We'll look forward to having you represent us there. So thank you for doing that. All right, if there is nothing further, then I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Good night.